I went to school in a wee place called Turkey, where they told me that Da Vinci designed the aeroplane. And my history book said Orville and the brother Wilbur Wright. Their names were on the page as the pioneers of flight. But in last week's Ireland Zone, they said that wasn't true. It was a man from South Derry who was the first man that ever flew. His name was Hudy McGuigan, and he hailed from Ballinasgreen. And to rise up like a bird was Hudy's lifelong dream. For when the other wains were playing on their ropes and on their swings, wee Hudy he'd be praying to God to give him wings. And when the men they went a hunting for the rabbit and the fox, he'd be up the mountain at a place called Eagle's Rock. But when he told them of his plan, the neighbours laughed out loud. They said he was an idiot and his head was in the clouds. And the wife, she was affronted, and she was sitting in the draught. And there was dung around the floor, she was always giving off. For the hens were in the cottage at the fire getting warmed. For Hudy had the 2 half steers, one strapped on every arm. I'm heading for the dock, and the rooster roared and screamed as civil aviation was born in Ballinasgreen. Now the first flight it was short, for he forgot the flat. He went flying past the church and had to buy a wallet slap. But after a string of curses, he straightened up the back, and he took down the wooden leathers and he headed for the stack. And like Icarus the Greek, he was destined for the sun, but his legs were getting wet, for the doors they weighed a ton. And the second flight was shorter, and he was like a wounded sparrow, and the sow went running squealing as he collided with the bar. But when he got off the crutches, all warnings were ignored, and Hudy took his flying dream back to the drawing board. And as the candlelit got duller, his ideas they got brighter. The weight was in the wood, he needed something lighter. So he bought a pile of geese and ducks and drakes in Dripperstown. And every time they lost a feather, sure it never hit the ground. He was that determined to better his design. The farmyard it was shining, not a stick nor twig nor twine. But the wife was still complaining of her neck and of her head, for Hudy had the pillows stripped off iron bed. And he was robbing robins' nests and all the feathers he could get. And the hay was lying rotten and the farm gone into debt. As he fiddled and he fittered, hammered and he nailed. In the stable on the table he made himself a tail. He shaped it like a fan. It was light but it was strong. It was 6 or 7 foot in length, and as broad as it was long. And the country people gathered from Moneynina to the Plum, as Hudy took his tail and tied it to his bum. With a brand new pair of wings, for the half-doors are lying cracked. And the wife now was crying. She said, Hudy, when will you be back? The rooster didn't know him, for he was feathered and he was tarred. He was like a bloody peacock strutting round the yard. But the neighbours now looked up to him to the steps beside the barn, as he viewed the Sperrin Mountains from Slavegallion to the Cairn. And he gives the tail a wag as he bended at the knee, then lifting up his wings, he waited for the breeze. And by God, this time he flew. He went floating through the air, fluttering like a butterfly, darting here and there, swooping like a swallow, sweeping like a swift. But the thorns were coming closer, and he hadn't got the left. But Hudy was delighted. Oh, he was on a high when they dragged him from the holly bush. God no kind as I could fly. Now that was years and years ago, but it was never written down. But Hudy, he's our hero here in Dripper's Town. And that's why we drink so much. Because we're still in celebration of his humble contribution towards modern aviation. So when next you're on a plane and they smile like Mr. Sheen, tell them painted ladies about the man from Balmascreen. And tell the pilot too, before he touches down, if it wasn't for Hudy McGuigan, they'd never get off the ground.